Alright guys, and welcome to the 14th episode of Lifting the Lid.
Joining us on the podcast today is Jim Galvin. Jim is a former Royal Marine Commando and ex-GB bobsleigh athlete.
In this conversation, expect to find out about Jim's tours of Iraq and Afghanistan, how being a junior athlete led him to the military, and how a culture of tall poppy syndrome is holding the Marines back.
Let's get into it.
Hello, and welcome back to another guest episode. We promised this for a few weeks now.
Yeah,
We've been teasing.
Our schedules haven't aligned as of yet, but we've made it happen for you. So this is a Lifting the Lid guest episode, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, do people even know the difference between lifting the lid and below the bar? This
not.
is purely just for our admin, isn't
I
it,
don't.
really?
Yeah.
Our guest
got a
doesn't,
clue.
so that's good.
Anyway, to introduce, we have Mr. Jim Galvin, to our roommate now for 6 weeks, and we've only just managed to tie him down on the 6th week. So
We say the 6th week. This is literally about 3 hours before we go to the airport.
So
Everything
this
is packed.
I'll start off by saying hello. And secondly, I'm going to say this is the most perfect example of Parkinson's law in the world. We're they'll get me on for the podcast. We've lived together for over 6 weeks every single day. We fly out of here in like 3 hours and we're only just doing it now.
yeah, every single Saturday. Well, we'll do it today, yeah, and then just something comes up.
Yeah.
But anyway,
But
it's
we're
good
here
to have
now.
you on, mate.
Thanks, mate. It's good to be here.
Good. Okay, so we're going to obviously kick off typically at the beginning where we usually go. So this is going to be generally, so the kind of listeners know, generally centred around your time in the Marines. Okay, so if we start sort of, I guess, just before when in kind of teenage years, and then go up until kind of your decision to join and how that sort of came about. What was your interest in the military? Where did that come from?
So, provisionally, my granddad was a World War II bootneck, represent, and 247, and basically, so I was a decathlete, so I was like a sprinter. I was a 100-meter sprinter, which is obviously like all speed and power work, which is like as far away as possible from like running 10Ks and doing loads of the stuff that most people prepping for the court would usually do. But I was a sprinter, went into the decathlon, and basically I just kept getting injured. So I was competing at a fairly kind of decent level, and my goal was to have that as my full-time career and to make it to Team GB. And it's so unbelievably flipping demanding on your body, but like with super explosive work that I just kept snapping. So I just kept getting injured, and it got to a point where I was like, maybe physiologically this just isn't for me, and I was just incredibly flipping stressed, like 17, 18, 19. Finally got to a stage where it was about a week before the British Championships, and I had like flights booked up north and stuff, myself and my coach. Then we were going to go up there for 3-4 days and then compete. And really, really looking forward to it. Best shape of my life, and I tore my hamstring. Like about literally 3 days before, and just like a like cruising pace on a track. And I was like, I think this is just done, because it was just destroying my brain. So from there, I was like, well, the military is always something I've considered. I'll look at a few kind of different options. There's a part of me that always wanted to be a pilot, but
Nice.
But this was at a stage, kind of like 2008, where if you'd ever had any history of asthma, it was just a blanket no. Like
Really?
there was no appeal, there was nothing else around it. It was like just an absolute flat out no.
Odd that was the case for pilot and not for Royal Marines.
Yeah, I
right?
know. Yeah,
That seems like pilots less physically challenging, aren't they? Maybe.
but I suppose it's just the risk to reward. Like at the end of the day, if they put me in training and I've got asthma in bootneck training, and I've like worst comes to worst, I fall over and get a little boo boo on my shin, whereas in a pilot, you blow up a plane. so maybe the risk
a little
is
more
amplified.
expensive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
the MOD.
Purely
right.
from a fiscal standpoint, I can get that. So basically, from there, it was there weren't really that many options that I was looking at, and I kind of stumbled across the Royal Marines. Obviously, I already kind of knew what it was, but the fact that I was like, well, that's the avenue that I want to take. From when I decided that I wanted to join the military, deciding that the Royal Marines was the right path for me took less than 5 minutes. I was like, well, obviously this is going to be the case. Foundationally, this is going to be the route.
Just because they're kind of one of the elite, or why was that kind of?
Yeah, I think so.
Decision so fast for you?
Yeah, basically just because I think there was probably, consciously or not, there was a little bit of a psychological pull there from kind of my granddad's legacy in it.
Mm-hmm.
But the elite nature of it, and obviously there was so much kind of good PR around that kind of 2007, 2008 kind of period.
So why not the paras? Because there's that kind of like parachute regiment, Royal Marines dichotomy, isn't there? Where there's like, what do you think the mindset differences between the two? Because I feel like they do draw from very distinct people. I think you're attracted to one or the other.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's really interesting that I never remember. In fact, I'm quite confident that I was never in a position where I looked at both and thought, I wonder which one's the best, because they are the two considered elite units. I wonder which one I'm going to go for. Not only do I not remember ever being in that position, I'm extremely confident I was never in that position, and it was always just the Marines for me. But I don't know why.
But is it like the sorting hat in Harry Potter? Are you like just?
Yeah,
are you born
maybe
into
one just chose us.
Yeah.
So I didn't
That's
choose the
it.
Corps. The Corps chose me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
maybe
one
that's
chooses
thing.
the wizard.
Yeah.
So the Paris has a little bit of a different culture, I think, inside it, but you wouldn't have known that. Kind of, I wondered if it was because you couldn't swim and you were kind of drawn towards adversity.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Yeah, just like absolute brazen masochism. Considering my swimming's poetic licensing in and of itself, isn't it?
Floating.
Yeah, panicking.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
aqua-based panicking.
You have a propensity for drowning, as we've
Yeah,
learned.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, drowning very, very quickly.
Obviously, for most people, the process of joining the Royal Marines is quite physically arduous. You have to kind of get yourself prepped and stuff. You were basically a GB athlete by that point, in I guess a different niche, but still very physically capable. Was there a kind of deliberate practice to get to the point where you could join, or was it kind of you were just there?
No, there was, but interestingly, it was really quick because I was still competing in athletics and track and field on the run-up until very, very, very close. So I actually had probably about 3 weeks. So I basically did no cardio because I was a sprinter for about 2 years. And then I had like 3 weeks between my last competition and PRMC, so the old school potential Royal Marines course. And then from then I had like 8 weeks or something between PRMC and a troop. So I basically only had like 10 weeks from doing no cardio for years, basically, into that. But I do have to say I had a weird level of. I think there's a benefit to the like unrefined arrogance that young men can have, where they do believe they're just fucking invincible. And I think that obviously that can become quite dangerous in certain situations. But there's a level of like how brazenly confident you think you are and capable you think you are as a young guy that can be very beneficial. And I was like, 10 weeks is all I need to get ready for this.
Well, I think there is an element of truth to that, though. We've spoken about this before. I mean, I think when you are younger, you are incredibly like bendy and malleable.
Yep.
Yeah, you just made that.
So you
rubber.
can back it up to a certain extent, because I think there's a big difference between joining the Royal Marines at 18 and then joining in at 25.
1000%. Yeah.
You're like that 7 years or whatever ages you a lot physiologically.
Yeah, world of difference, isn't it? And your ability to respond and react to training stimulus is also a little bit different as well, the further you get towards your 30s. But no, so that's interesting. Most people obviously would have to, especially 3 weeks to get to CPC is just kind of, well, PRMC is kind of a ridiculous turnaround time. But if you're already an athlete, maybe that, that probably carries over. So you get into training within kind of 10 weeks. How long was your joining process from like applying onwards?
Yeah, and we should caveat this as well, because we're actually in a period of war at this point, aren't we?
Yeah, that's why I was.
So obviously, Shep joined the Royal Marines in relative peacetime, arguably the quietest period in the post-war period.
Yeah,
since the Second World War.
I chose that, according to some people.
You chose not to forge your own war.
You mean you didn't want to join when you were 11?
Yeah, well, this is it. I did try. Hannah Snelled it. But but. So, again, my process took 9 months. So I wanted to compare, considering, like you say, it's a wartime era. So was there a kind of fast track?
Like an all-hands-on-deck kind of approach to recruitment, or was it still methodical?
It's a good question. I mean, obviously, I have no comparison because I'm not really that versed in what it is like now and the kind of the time that it would take. But one of the things I remember being spoken about quite a lot is it seemed very random post PRMC. So it seemed like very structured in terms of there was a rough amount of time that you'd have to wait from passing your interview, passing your PJFT, which is like the 1.5 mile test on a treadmill in a local gym, passing the psychometric test, all of these like 3 different stages of going to a careers officer or gym. And then from there, it was basically the same amount of time to get to PRMC. But then after PRMC, some people were in within 3 weeks. Some people had to wait like 5 months. So it was really like to start a training troop. So it was really bizarre. And I'm not sure if that was based on like location, like your careers office push you forward more or what. Yeah. I don't know. But I just, interview, PJFT, or interview psychometric test, PJFT, obviously 3 different kind of things down in Brighton for me. Then PRMC was probably kind of about a month later. And then I think it was probably about 2 months after that I started my troop, which was September 2008.
Okay, cool. So into training then, it was obviously, I think, the same training as I did, because it's changed recently in you've got like ROP and stuff, but you just did foundation and all the rest of it, right?
Yep,
so
that's right.
Did you go all the way through as an original, or did you have to go like back in training?
No, I got back trooped by 2 weeks after, at about like week 23. So I was an original up to about week 23. And then I got back trooped 1 troop, and then ended up passing out with that troop. So
because of your kind of, I'll say, lack of prep, lack of specific prep anyway, how did you find the kind of training physically? Was it easy on that side of things and difficult on like the learning curve side of things, or was it kind of difficult on both? Or
I mean, the learning, I think like physically, obviously different people struggle with different things. I mean, obviously, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic by the fact that I said I didn't do kind of cardio for years. I hadn't done really cardio basically that year up until kind of September, because I was purely focused on kind of sprinting and long jump. Yeah. But, you know, I played football at like basically kind of like the junior of like a semi-pro level for like a couple of years before that. So there's still that in my legs and in my body, and I was still, you know, super active. So it's not like I turned up not knowing what to do other than literally jump into a fucking sandpit. So physically, the physical side of things, it's PT superior, isn't it? At the end, when you have gym pass.
Like week 10.
Yeah, week 9, week 10, something like that. So it's PT superior. So physically, in terms of the phys, I found okay. The thing physically that I struggled with the most, and I think I actually struggled with a lot more than other people, was sleep deprivation.
Really? Okay.
So like yomping for me was absolutely, so running was okay, gym based stuff was okay, speed stuff like Pace to be a Winner, because of my sprinting background, I have to say it was obviously very lucky that that's what I'd done on the run up. So like realistically, usually I'd win those because that was literally my job. You'd bloody think so. Yeah, that tree back to me. If I came 18th, there's something gone very wrong here.
You got some fucking fast fuckers in your troop.
Yeah, exactly. Jamaican sprint training camps just rocked up to Libston.
Ben Simons.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And yomping stuff was okay. The sleep deprivation stuff for me was the stuff that just wrote me off, and I really struggled with that.
It is interesting that yomping was so okay, considering that's just basically long endurance stuff when you had a sprint background. That's really random.
Yeah, it is random, but I think like I've tried to kind of rationalize this in my head, and I think that although it is, because it's not really cardio actually, I think it's just endurance, which I do strike a distinction between, because I don't think like you're not in like zone 3. It's just continuing. Part of it I think is psychological because it's uncomfortable.
I think it's just pain management.
It is.
We spoke about this before, haven't we?
It's pain tolerance.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of stuff I'm okay with, that you can get to a stage where it sucks within 30 minutes, but it's not going to get any worse. You just keep going for that time.
Yeah.
But also I think that because there's an extra amount of load going through your system every single step, I think that just having good like unilateral strength,
good mechanics as well.
Good mechanics, good single leg strength massively helps. And I think the issue is a lot of people don't have that, and a lot of people that even if they were running like we had a couple of guys that ran like 7:30 mile and a halves, like in boots,
which is ridiculous.
Which is absurdly.
If you have no frame of reference, that's like a sub 5 minute mile, right? Or it's 5 minute mile.
Yeah, it's 5 minutes. It's a 5 minute mile in boots and trousers.
Yeah, for a mile and a half.
Yeah, and then keep going at that speed for longer. So it's ridiculous. So we had a couple of those guys, but you put weight on them and past like the kind of 3, 4, 5 mile point, they're just written off because they just don't have the ability to basically be able to kind of like slingshot every single step into. So they're kind of collapsing and having to reinitiate force every single step. So being strong really is a foundational part of yomping.
Yeah. So did you find the 30 miler the easiest of the commando test then, given that that's basically just a massive yomp?
I'd say I found the 9 mile speed march the easiest, which I think most people do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say that's about across the board.
So the way that I see it is, if you're past a certain level of fitness, the 9 mile speed march and the 30 miler should, in theory, be the easiest ones. Obviously, they're not easy. That'd be offensive to everyone who deserves a green lid to reference those as that. But the ones that are individual led, which are the endurance course and the Tarzan, in theory, if you like, the fitter that you are, they should be the hardest ones.
They're worse, right?
They're worse because because they are max out. Whereas if you going as a section or a troop through something is max out, then that shows that you're probably not as fit as you could be. If you
that makes sense. I think it's interesting. The 30 miler is one of those where it's like a sticky middle ground where it's not heavy enough or slow enough to be a yomp, but it's still kind of 5 miles an hour or whatever you're kind of moving at, and it's a sort of medium weight. So that was where I struggled. I was alright at yomping as well because it's just pain tolerance. The speed stuff I was fine because I was weighed fuck all, and then the middle bit, that speed marching or that kind of 35 pounds of weight, I was terrible. But I don't know if there's a distinction between that for you. If you had like yomping's obviously heavier stuff, that's fine. Speed marching stuff, was that still okay? Or were you did you struggle with that as well?
No, speed marching stuff I was fine with. Yeah, speed marching stuff.
I'm
I was
just
fine
a bitch. It would seem.
You said it, pal. But yeah, I mean that kind of stuff was okay. I think obviously by the time that you get to that point, one of the big dictating factors is how many niggles you're carrying when you get into that. That's the thing about the 30 miler. You're not doing it fresh. Like it's the fourth of 4 tests.
It's
fourth test is 5 days. So you could be the fittest guy in the world and super robust, but if you knock your knee or your ankle a little bit on the Tarzan or something, the next day you're doing the 30 miler, you're gonna be in the pain cave by a mile.
Yeah, that's it.
So that's the mental thing about the 30 miler is that you're not prepped. You don't have your own nutritionist and chef and massage therapist or whatever beforehand. You have a lot of guys effectively kind of like semi-limping at the start line.
Yeah, smashing paracetamol or whatever it may be.
Yeah, just doing whatever you can do.
It's
because you're like,
just entirely suboptimal, isn't it? And that's the point.
Yeah, that's it. And that's the difference. That really is the difference between like tactical athletes and other athletes, or athletes generally, and the military, because there are so like in sport you pursue this control of every variable. Whereas the whole point of like military training is we want to see like how you respond to basically curveballs every 5 seconds, not sleeping, and basically we put you in the most suboptimal environment and then see how you handle life then, which is the opposite of basically every sport.
Yes, every dial's down to 0, and now you've got to perform. Right? So
yeah,
it's completely different.
So, talk to us about like towards the end of training then, because from what I understand, the UK is still active in Iraq and Afghanistan at this moment in time. So where is your head at in terms of that? Because I'm guessing that lads are literally passing out and then going straight off to one of those conflict areas effectively.
Yeah, so this was before. So this was basically when 40 Commando, 4.2 and 4.5 were basically interchangeable. So they were all fighting commando units that basically, well, obviously they're in different geographical locations and they're on slightly different rotations, but in essence they did the same job. They were fighting units. For the guys that were like the King's Badgemen and I can't even remember, maybe the Diamonds, maybe not, basically got to go to their first unit of choice. So a couple of guys went to 40 Commando because they were the next to deploy.
Yeah, so is there like, are people putting in kind of strategically knowing that they're going to get a tour out of it, or is it the opposite? Or
well, usually they'd want to do that. Yeah, I mean, there are some people that might just want more money, so they basically go to what is 4.3 now, which is what it was Fleet Protection Group, so FPG, because you get a bit more money up there. So there are a few guys that did that, but mostly people went to. Because 40 was basically full because it was the next one to deploy. So a lot of people put their chit in for 4.2 and 4.5. So I went for, because I'm Southern, so I put it in for 4.2, which is down in Plymouth. So I got that. So this was in like June 2009. And I rock up there. Obviously, like you have like a long weekend off or whatever. Then I rock up there. And as far as I'm aware, I'll like get in with my company and then basically start moving towards deploying about 18 months later. So it's like you're going to wait for that, and I didn't know what the next 18 months would look like. But I start digging out with a few things when I'm there. Luckily, I actually break my wrist, but even with a broken wrist, I'm walking around with a cast, asking if I can go on exercise, and people are like, "What is this bloke doing?" Like everyone else is like trying to get out of the field, and I'm like, "I want to go in." Just because I guess I'm a bit kind of nerdy with it, I want to make a good impression. So I dig out, I make friends with some of the other guys, and try to do whatever I can to kind of stand myself in good stead for my career to come. And 4-2 Commando at this point is like 780 blokes or something, and they pick 23 blokes to go to Iraq. And this is a few months after. So I joined 4-2 Commando in June 2009, and I'm in. I get selected for the Iraq tour in September. So like 3 months later, and then we're there in December, and that's December to March, December to April, so like 4.5 months or something.
Why is so few people? Is that because things are winding down there at that point?
It was a different kind of tour, yeah. So I mean, it wasn't Optelic, which is the main Iraq tour that had been, kind of going on for the however many years. Op Palfrey, which is what I went on, was a slightly different thing, which is like a force protection tour. So the Americans. So a couple of British naval officers and American naval officers were basically training the new Iraqi Navy after Saddam's regime had gone down. But there was still a really, really, really fucking high kidnap threat within the Iraqi military. So basically we were there as like force protection. So these like the American kind of brigadiers and the colonels and some of the admirals and stuff, and some of the guys from the Pentagon would come and fly in, and we were attached to them for a day or two to kind of accompany them and chaperone them to all these different meetings and all the things that they need to do and kind of stay out of the way, but basically to kind of have a good lay of the land to make sure that they didn't get nabbed.
It's weird that Iraq even has a navy. I wouldn't even think of it as a naval power. Is it landlocked? Does it have any sea?
So basically it is completely landlocked other than about a 2-mile kind of non-landlocked section.
But they've got it covered. They've got it fucking covered.
You don't worry about that. So there's no civvy beaches. Because it's a tiny little kind of section. It's a tiny little strip of land that connects to the ocean, and it's all military. I think it's all government.
Just parked an aircraft carrier along that stretch of 2
Yeah.
miles, just a big wall.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
That's it.
So, what are your kind of standout memories from that tour in Iraq then? Because it sounds like it'd be very different to like a conventional combat tour.
It was very different. Yeah, it was very different. So one of the memories was. About halfway through, there were a couple of the Iraqi guys that some of them were military, some of them were civvy, had like brought some of their family along. It was really weird, and because
it's like a training exercise.
Well, no, it was like a job. Like we had basically a helo landing, and there were some of these guys in there, but there were civvies or some of the civvy workers. I think some of the civvy guys that were working in construction there, and basically a couple of them they were either pissed or high or something, and a couple of them brought some other guys along, and basically they started to kind of get a little bit leery with something and saying like, "Oh, you're brand new," and we were like, "Well, we've been here like 3 months," and I was looking at a couple of the guys. A few of us were kind of looking at each other like, "Okay, this is getting a little bit sketchy now because we are getting to the point where we are like acutely outnumbered." So we kind of had to call back to kind of the ops room and be like, "What the fuck do you want us to do? We've got a helo landing, but we've got these guys in the HLS, like the helicopter landing site." And he was like, "Do whatever you can to kind of push them back." And they weren't supposed. We're armed because that's our job. They weren't supposed to be armed. They were armed. That added like another. So it was just one of those things of like it's not kind of a direct contact. But it was a really, which are obviously more stimulating in some ways, but a hell of a lot easier to kind of navigate because they're more linear. Someone shooting at you, you're shooting back. You're both assaulters, and you see who's going to win, basically based on skill set, etc. This was very different in that it was just like, how the fuck do we de-escalate this thing? Because you could tell some of these guys were either a little bit pissed or a little bit, shot up some heroin. I don't know what the hell they done.
Unpredictable as well.
Yeah,
I guess, right?
and you just have no idea.
Well, I guess there's quite a clear language barrier as well. Have you got a translator with you, or are you trying to de-escalate things via someone else?
Yeah, so we had basically, so we had an interpreter with us, and some of the guys on their end anyway, the military guys, some of the guys that work, the civvies that worked in construction, not so much, but some of the guys spoke English. But it was just one of these things where I was like, you just don't know. You just don't know what's going to happen, because there is a level of there's a wildness to some of those situations where you're like, this is one of those things that could very easily go from, it's a bit of a joke and a little bit of like an alpha male off, which is funny enough anyway when you kind of look at it through any lens, to someone being like, right, well, I just take a couple of pot shots.
Yeah.
And you're just like, Jesus Christ, what the hell could happen if this happened? And I was like, everyone's mind's kind of racing to like, would they actually do that? Would they actually open up right now? Even though we're effectively working together, like we're training them, would they do that? And you just don't know.
Well, that happened a lot, right? Especially in Afghanistan, where people were training the Afghan National Army. There was a lot of times where the ANA would turn on the Brits or Yanks that were trying to train them. So it's not uncommon for that to happen. I think that was kind of a thing.
Yeah, we had it in Afghan in a Sanger, because one of our guys, we were trying to train the ANA up to take over some of our sentry positions, and one of the guys pulled like an AK out and like stuck it like in the face or on the neck, like the end of the barrel on the neck of like one of my mates, because he changed the radio station.
Changed the radio station?
Yeah.
What was he listening to?
Well, as in like the ANA guy had this like absurdly loud thing, and like my mate Pinky, shout out Pinky, represent, literally just turned it down, because it was like, mate, I need to have some level of.
I'm working it.
Yeah,
mate.
basically, like we should probably try and see to listen, because this is, I think the sun was going down, it was getting a lot darker, and it was like, we should probably try to listen to see if someone's digging in an idea there. That's literally our job, is to make sure that we can kind of keep watch.
He's like, no.
And all he did was turn the music down, and the guy just flipped out.
That's mental.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, he was listening to kind of the Afghan top 40 or whatever, and he was like, "It's fucking number one's next, man."
Yeah. I think Pinky was just annoyed that it wasn't S Club 7.
Yeah. Well, that's understandable.
That's what it's all about. Completely understandable.
Yeah.
So how long do you spend in Iraq then, Jim?
So Iraq was about 4 months.
4 months, and then you get back from Iraq, and what happens next?
So I get back from Iraq in like March, April 2010, and then basically rejoin K Company, 4-2 Commando, and go straight into pre-deployment training for Afghan, which is basically a year. So like PDT, it's a specific like curriculum, it's a pathway that you follow,
right,
to get you prepped for that tour, which lasts for about 12 months.
And is that more conventional in the sense that they haven't like cherry picked like 20 odd guys? That's like most people are off.
Correct. That was a unit deployment. So that was the whole of 4-2 Commando. So obviously Iraq was the kind of the weird niche one, but Afghan was everyone. It was a whole unit wide deployment.
We're going to go on. So the fact that you got handpicked for Iraq, has that put you in good stead with everyone else now? Have you?
I feel as though that's a good organic question, but let me tell you why that's not the case.
Right, okay.
The call might not necessarily be as logical as you, Eddie Rex. So basically, I get back from... So I was like... I dug out so unbelievably flipping hard before I went to Iraq. Even with a broken wrist, volunteering for kind of like shit jobs, still going out and exercise, still doing all of this stuff. Get picked, however many, like 700-800 men in the unit, 23 you go to Iraq. Get an unbelievably good report from Iraq, like an extraordinary report. And before that report lands, I come back. My first day back in K Company, because I've been gone for 4 months, we've got a new Sergeant Major. So I've never met him. I just decided to take it upon myself and kind of walk into his office to introduce myself. So, Sergeant Major, Marine Galvin. Obviously, I've just returned from Op Power 3. Just wanted to come say hello. Obviously, we had Sergeant Major, blah 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 here beforehand, so I thought I'd come and say hello before I kind of rejoined 4 Troop or whatever. And he went, "Yeah, Marine Galvin, yeah, glad you popped in. I pinged you for a clerk's course for the next 3 years." And I was like, so basically, for those of you that don't know, this is like one of the jobs in the Corps. I don't even think it exists anymore, does it?
Yeah.
Oh, it does?
I think so.
That sucks. So basically, it's effectively like an office. It's like a clerical, computer-based job, that you do, you still can do it in a fighting company within a fighting unit, but at the end of the day, you're not like you're in company HQ. You're not in a fighting troop.
Yeah.
And we kind of went through this thing, and I was like, "What the fuck is going on here?" And I did kind of say to him, I was like, "Sergeant Major, like respectfully, if I could just ask, like why me? Because these things that come through, they're what's called like pings, like shit pings." Normally the shit pings are reserved for the guys that haven't been performing very well.
The shit blokes.
The shit blokes, effectively. Yeah. So I said, Sergeant Major, like, with all due respect, like why me? And he, without even blinking, this is like the level of lunacy that the Corps adheres to sometimes, just looked up at me from his desk and went, I got up my desk one morning and you were away and I hadn't met you. So I just gave it to you. So there was no like level of due diligence as to be like, okay, before I completely fuck up this bloke's career for the next 3 years, shall I see if he's any good?
Well,
like,
he's
he might be in Iraq for a reason.
That's what I mean. So he's not even had the foresight to think, oh, perhaps there's a reason why I haven't met him, because he's been chosen to go to Iraq.
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
that's only one step removed.
Yeah,
well.
yeah, literally.
One thought
he's gone,
process
don't know
removed.
who that is. Fuck off.
Cool. That would have taken about 9 seconds. Wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So basically, so that happens. I'm then just in a bit of a shit state for about 2 weeks. I meet and kind of get to know my new troop boss a little bit. Because I'm still in it. So this was like March or April. I'm not supposed to start my clerk's course until like December or something. So like I'm still kind of in my normal job for a while. Get to know my new troop boss. He starts to cotton on that I'm not a shit bloke, and he then gets my report from Iraq, and his my troop commander in Iraq, I think was quite a good friend of his, and he gets my report and he's like, we can't have you going on a clerk's. Like, what the hell are we doing with it? And I was like, boss, is there anything you can do? So this is where basically the narrative of the military was changing a little bit. We had an American dude, I think, called General Petraeus, who introduced like the hearts and minds kind of priority of like, this is where we actually need to kind of become friends with the locals and get them on side if we're ever to get the hell out of this thing in Afghan. So human intelligence work generally, but what's called HUMINT, which is human intelligence, becomes kind of the British government decides, kind of makes the call that that's one of the most important things. So from our company, which is about 180 guys, there's like, I think there's 5 of us that get picked for this human intelligence course. So I get to go on that. So there's myself and 4 others, I think, that get to go on that course. That was absolutely wicked, actually. I mean, that was like a little bit of behavioural psychology, a little bit of like stuff that's more relevant to kind of that part of the world. Is really bloody interesting, and do quite well on the course. So of like the 5 of us in the company that are chosen, I kind of like ranked the highest, and I'm like, okay, this is it. I could definitely come back now to K Company, to my Sergeant Major, and like hopefully we can switch the ping out for someone else. And I basically walk him through this stuff. I said, this is my report from Iraq. Like, this is why I went to Iraq. This is my report from Iraq, which is, like pretty decent. This is my report from the intelligence course that you sent me on, which we've said is like the most important job to do right now. And of all the 5 of us, of the 200 in the company, or 180 in the company, 5 of us were chosen. Of the 5 of us that went, I ranked the highest. Is there any chance I can get out of being like a desk jockey for the next 3 years? And you went, and I was just like,
you dug out for that.
Yeah, no.
And I was like, this conversation did not go how I was hoping. Yeah. So I was like, what the fuck am I going to do now? So basically there was nothing. So I just had to kind of really toe this line between. So I had to do the clerk's course. I went to Afghan, and luckily my job was kind of split in that there was a certain amount of human stuff that I could do, which was really good. So I was very blessed at the fact that that at least when I was out on Herrick, I was kind of being like, I was like ping-ponging between kind of different checkpoints, doing some different intelligence work there, which is really cool.
So you actually go to Afghan under the guise of being a clerk, effectively?
Yeah, well, in a weird bit of like a split role. So that was like my main role because it's a line number. So basically, it's a weird thing. Like every job has to be fulfilled by a certain. So they had to have a company.
So they have to pigeonhole you into something,
effectively.
basically.
So they pigeonholed me into that. However, they just kind of like behind the scenes allowed me to do this other thing, which basically just meant that I could actually kind of go out and actually do some proper fucking soldiering as proper int work, which is good.
So in Afghanistan, right? What does being a clerk involve? Like, are you fucking file? Are you got a filing cabinet? Because you imagine like this kind of like barren wasteland,
Yeah.
and you just like in some fucking forward operating base in the middle of nowhere. Like, have you got?
Yeah, you got it.
It doesn't sound like the kind of place that's kind of conducive
to office work,
to administration.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, you don't get many Karens in a Starbucks on the corner.
Yeah, exactly.
They're moaning about the fact their Maca Frappuccino comes out the wrong temperature. So there's an ops room. I mean, so there's like an ops room in each patrol base. So we had an ops room, and that's where kind of like all the SIG stuff was. That's where whoever was in charge of the ops, that's where kind of like the OC's desk and stuff was. And then effectively there was just a list of jobs that I had to kind of undertake over the course of like a week, as an example. But if I just smashed those out quick, I kind of opened myself up to go out on some of the patrols, to go out on some of the proper ops. So I was kind of working with the Sergeant Major, who for me, Sergeant Major, WO2, Jason Reed, ML1, absolutely hoofing bloke. Like, he saved that thing for me. If I was a company clerk under a shit CSM, like I don't know what I would have done. I don't know whether or not I just would have actually just tried to have rapped and just gone somewhere else. But he was an absolute legend, and he kind of saved everything. So I worked with him, and I also worked with the IO, the intelligence officer. So I just had a couple of people that I kind of reported to, and then they communicated between each other and was like, right, I mean, has Jim done this particular work, which is pretty menial and doesn't really take that much time? Yes. Right, now we can actually deploy him in this role. Right,
so they let you kind of tweak the system a bit so you could then go on to do the stuff that you actually wanted to do effectively.
Yeah, correct, yeah. And that was realistically more important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, yeah. So I mean, it was just a bit of a shit situation, but obviously that's like, I really enjoyed parts of my experience as a Royal Marine, but the fact that there's no fairness, and the fact that it's just such an unjust system, with the fact that one guy can just say, right, he's going to do that,
has all the decision power,
and has literally that level of authority and that level of omnipotent power over someone's career, is absolutely crazy to me. And it was like, it wasn't like I was like, oh, I made a couple of big mistakes and he wouldn't let me kind of rectify them. It wasn't, I mean, even that is probably unjust in a sense, but it was just the fact that he even just said to me, well, I'd never met you. I was basically having a busy day. This ping came down on my desk. I'd never met you, so I just chose you.
Yeah, it's one bloke's kind of personality, disposition decides someone's next 3 years. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, that level of power is is absolutely mental. And the fact that you, like...
It's a single point of power as well.
Yeah,
that's just it. Him, right? There's no kind of board meeting, or, you know, should we kind of get everyone together and think, should Marine Galvin do this and this? There's none of that. It's just like, right, I have the decision, so I make it.
Yeah.
Not in the interest of your employer either, which is the great irony.
Yeah.
No, just for ease of that bloke's life.
Yeah. And it's like such, as you said, like a little 3-second decision there could have such a large impact on someone's life. You'd think they'd use a bit more foresight.
Yeah, well, 100%. I mean, I wonder quite regularly whether or not what I would be doing, and whether or not I'd still be in that world in some way if that hadn't happened. But the issue was, like, even after the Iraq report came through, and even after I went on the intelligence course, which is a hard course, man, and I came back and you know, did okay on that, it was still no chance we're keeping you in this, because at the end of the day the paperwork's done.
So even if you like love the Corps and love the military or whatever, that kind of thing could just make you threaders. Even if you're not that, well, like, removing the fact that it's obviously a clerk's thing and that's not great, just that attitude and having no agency over where you go just makes you annoyed. And so that just puts a bad taste in your mouth for the rest of the kind of next couple of years.
You could see how you could easily become disenfranchised, having kind of invested so much of your time and energy into
trying to get
this thing, and then it kind of treat you so poorly effectively.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's it. I mean, it's a split-second decision that some old white bloke just refuses to go back on. It's like the most English thing ever. It's just like, I mean, there's no process here. There's no procedure for, is this an appropriate decision for us, for the good of the Corps, and for the individual, and for everything? Is this fair? Is this net positive? There's none of that. It's just one guy. Someone spilled coffee on his shoes that day, and then he's fucked for that. That's his career done. So like, it's wild.
So tell us about some of the standout moments from Afghanistan then, because we've had Gary McNamara on of Plug-in Rehab fame, and he was of the weird kind of era of people that managed to go to Iraq and Afghanistan in a relatively short period of time. And because he was an engineer, he basically said he spent his time in Afghan getting shot at in a JCB.
Yeah. But
I imagine your experience was obviously very different being a Marine.
Yeah, I mean...
Or are you just getting shot at on foot?
Well, everywhere, yeah. On foot, in vehicles. I mean, it's obviously such a weird thing in that it's any kind of guerrilla warfare like this, what's called COIN, right? Counterinsurgency. It's not conventional warfare where there are two opposing forces fighting for kind of the control of certain land and like moving a front line forwards or whatever.
I guess you know where you stand in that respect because the enemy's wearing a uniform.
Well, yeah, you know who the enemy is.
And you can shoot at them if you see them.
Correct, yeah. So obviously you get a couple of pot shots over a wall and then you kind of like assault the position and then it's in the middle of it's an afternoon like bazaar, it's like a market. And you're walking through and it's like, right, have you got a description of the bloke? And it was like, is that going to be necessary because they all look the same? It's like, well, it's a Central Asian man in a dish dash. Okay, that helps. Thank you. Yeah. There's 7,000 of them right here. So it's like someone could chug a couple of pot shots. You go around, and then if you can't ID anyone,
it's like Guess Who, but none of the names ever go down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But
is he a farmer? No.
Yeah. All right. Fuck. No, they're still all up.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was like moments like that. Or there's a level of frustration, but actually, I say frustration. That is your expectation. So it's actually quite consistent because that was the one thing that I think they did very well before any Herrick tour is you're so well prepped for what, like it matches your expectations very accurately. So you're not lied to about what it's like. You know what it's like, and that's one of the benefits of having PDT, of having that pre-deployment training be 12 months.
So did you feel more ready for your Afghan tour than your Iraq tour? Because you basically got sent straight to Iraq, right? Out of training, which is obviously training's obviously a certain thing, but you don't really feel like fully ready after training. That's why you have PDT. Yeah,
because PDT is basically there's a level of specificity to the PDT that you're doing for the environment that you're about to go into. So our PDT for Iraq was 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, so 2
weeks down in Portsmouth. So
which is a lot like Iraq.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I felt as though I was there. So I mean, I did, but did I feel more ready for Afghan than Iraq?
I guess you were a more experienced soldier at that point.
True.
Yeah, I was a more experienced soldier, and it's more in line with what your training was. Whereas obviously Iraq was the force protection thing was a very different thing. It was kind of like a security bodyguarding job. So it was that kind of close protection work was a new thing. So in theory, even though there's less going on, there's a level of novelty to that. So you're always still aware with that. But obviously Afghan, you've just got to be switched on the whole bloody time. But you're, I don't really know. I did feel ready. I did feel ready when I went there, and it was really cool. And I wish I could have done more stuff there. And like I've said to Shep a number of times, I definitely experience a level of incompletion with the military. And I think a part of that is the fact that I never really got to do the work in the way that I would have liked to have done the work. And I think that all comes down from the fact that as soon as I got that Clark's ping, everything was just in a shit state from there.
What do you mean in terms of kind of like names and titles and promotions, or just in terms of like job experience?
Kind of both, really. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what I would have done if I'd have stayed in. I think I would have continued down the intelligence route because I just found that more interesting, and as opposed to conventional kind of Green Army stuff. Like I wouldn't have wanted to be GD for 10 years because I just think that you go to do the same exercises in Dartmoor, and then you go to the same. Shep's nodding already. You go back to Brecon Beacons, you go back to Senny Bridge, you go back to kind of the Highlands, and you do all of these things, and it's like it would be cool, but there would be a level of the novelty would wear off, and there would be a level of repetition with that, I think.
So how does that work logistically? Because we did an episode on like careers and specialisations. So if you say you're a clerk and you're fed up with it, how long is it before you can then basically retrain in something else?
So it's a minimum of 2 to 3 years. So the nail in the coffin for me for my career was when I got back from Afghan, I went straight into the development squad for GB Bobsleigh. So I kind of got strict because I was like, well, fuck it, I'm not going to stay here, so I might as well become a bit of a track. If I had the option to basically do sport, a lot of sport all around the world, kind of semi-funded, I'd be like, this is fantastic. And my chit was already in, so I was already kind of leaving at the end of 2012. And I said at one point, I will stay even as a clerk, which is a job that no one wants to do, which makes your life a lot easier and saves someone else from getting pinged. I will stay in the Corps. I will stay as a clerk. And the only thing that I want to do is stay in the Plymouth area. So at 4-2 or at like Stonehouse, which is like kind of like Brigade HQ or whatever. And again, there's one guy that was just a petulant old man who was like, no, you've made your decision. And I was like, you're literally, like, this decision is affecting you right now. Like, you're literally cutting your nose off to spite
you're giving them an olive branch there.
It's
mental. And they've just chopped it in half.
Yeah, they were like, no. I purely had it was like a petulant
There's
thing.
a weird thing about people proffing, isn't there? Like, people getting a good thing. They're like, well, no, you can't do that because that means that you're experiencing a positive thing.
Yeah, how dare
there's
you
almost
be happy?
there's almost like a little bit of resistance there.
Like a masochistic,
everyone's
mentality in the Corps. With some people, I think, well, anecdotally, I've obviously never been in myself, but from what you guys talk about, you get people that are just like there for pain, effectively.
Mate,
just trying to see you off.
Yeah, it's wild. Like the tall poppy syndrome is more real in the Royal Marines than in any other social paradigm I've ever been in.
Yeah.
If somebody profs, everyone else is threaders about it. And there are people further up the chain who will literally go out of their own way to do nothing other than prevent you from proffing.
It's so
It's
self-defeating that though, because
yeah,
by virtue of you all even having a green lid, you are all high achievers. So the idea of kind of implementing a tall poppy syndrome is always going to be self-defeating.
Yeah,
it's just like you're all obviously highly capable individuals. So the chances are you're going to go on to achieve things.
Yeah, fundamentally, like that just makes the workplace
toxic,
and people have a negative experience of working in there. So then they're just not going to be as productive, etc. So it's a bit ridiculous. But I don't know where it comes from. You got any insight into
that? Not really. I mean, the only thing I can think is that culture would perpetuate more of that culture, because I think if you have 100 guys join the Royal Marines at any one time, because of the level of tall poppy syndrome and because of potentially an elite level of capability, like one of our troop commanders was an Olympic silver medalist. We had another guy that was a swimmer in the Commonwealth Games.
Yeah, it's not uncommon, is it, for people to be like...
For people to be like, they are highly achieving, very highly competent people. So I think, unfortunately, what's going to happen is some of the more competent people are going to leave because they're going to be able to get more freedom, more reward, more money, etc. outside in the civvy world, which means, unfortunately, you have this perpetual kind of this upward cascade of the shit blokes getting promoted.
Isn't this what I said in the first episode?
Pretty much so, I think. Yeah. So you get the people, basically the left, like the people that have not stagnated, because that's doing them a disservice, but the ones that haven't gone on to win like silver at the Olympics, who just become like perpetually jarred out basically by everyone around them leaving, and they're moving up within the Corps, but relatively,
but almost by virtue of just being there.
Correct. Yeah. Almost by virtue of it's just like that is a weird survivorship bias.
I mean, it is, and this is
a deep down. Do they know that? Is that what adds to their frustration?
I think they would acknowledge that they're a little bit threaders, that they're a little bit like ambiently pissed off. But I wouldn't think they would. I wouldn't necessarily say that they would understand why. It's a really difficult thing, man. Like, I don't know. I don't really know. I mean, I think you get it in... I'm not even sure what it would be like. I imagine it's even worse. I wonder whether or not it would be worse now, because the people that stay in the military during peacetime...
True.
It's like if they stay during peacetime, it might be because they don't know what the hell to do outside.
There's a lot of that, I think.
And then they rise up the ranks, and then there's 100 new guys, 100 really capable men that could have incredible potential and could have an amazing career, but they're effectively getting governed and guided by this really angry sergeant that is actually innately less capable than they are.
And like you say, that angry sergeant has almost ridiculous amount of power, almost all the power in the world,
omnipotency, right? And that's the thing. Like, there is no due process of making decisions with this stuff. They have complete, especially when you're in training, and especially when you're a bit more of a sprog, when you get to a commando unit and you're junior.
Well, that's just the kind of the process of the military is very much like you have no say in things. That's kind of the idea, right? It's an authoritarian thing. You just follow what people tell you to do, and so one of the functions of that is that when you get given an order, you really can't question it too much.
Well, you're putting a lot of faith in your superiors to make the right decisions for you, aren't you,
so
effectively?
it almost has. You would have to create a superior system that are all kind of really, really good blokes, because then them having that power wouldn't really be that much of an issue. But like we said, I mean, that doesn't always happen.
No, it doesn't always happen, and I don't really know what the alternative is. I mean, obviously the system is the system. The system can only really exist in a certain way, and if you get angry, ambiently threaders, incapable people join, like, what the hell are you going to do? Like, I mean, the military doesn't really have an HR department, and not a particularly robust system for that. So it's difficult. But I mean, from an individualistic standpoint, there are still unbelievable rewards that you can get in terms of the development of discipline, the friendship and the brotherhood that you can develop, the skills that you can attain, real reinforcement of feelings of capability that you can get from it. So,
and the opportunity, to be quite honest.
And the opportunity. I mean, the opportunity for travel now, I mean, obviously, you know, you and I, the conversations that you and I have had around the kind of the budget, around some of the exercises that you've done. So now that effectively we're not spending hundreds of billions on war stuff, the budget can go more towards exercise.
Training
so
stuff,
I mean, you obviously went to Norway, you went to you went to California. You've done a lot of stuff that we never did.
Yeah, so how does that contrast with you, Jim? Were those opportunities not available for you because you basically got sent to Iraq and Afghanistan?
Yeah, I mean, for me specifically, yeah. I mean, they obviously I did 2 tours in a short period of time, which is very rare. Some of the other guys had other cool stuff. Like, they went to, when we got back from Afghan, we had a company deployment to Norway for like 2-3 months. I didn't go because I was already in development sport at this point, so I kind of became undeployable for that, which I was kind of fine with because I knew that I was leaving anyway. But a lot of the guys really, really enjoyed that. There was some other exercises to other places. I think there's an exercise later that year to Florida. So there was stuff, but I think it was just, as Afghan was winding down, obviously I imagine the kind of the budget and stuff could be redistributed to other cool exercises. So that was one thing I will say. It doesn't sound like the Marines have rested on their laurels with making sure that the Corps as a whole can do some cool stuff. If you put yourself out there, you stack the deck in your favour. But, you know,
that's it, yeah. I mean,
as we've covered, that's not always guaranteed.
Well, yeah, it's not guaranteed, but I think there is a sort of element of self-determinism where you can kind of put yourself in for certain exercises, and there's a lot of like just burying your head in the sand with in the Corps, because you feel like, I did anyway, I feel like those opportunities, I don't know if it's the same for you, will just be there forever, because I don't know, they come thick and fast. You're like, well, I'll get on the next one or whatever. But if you actually take action to book onto this trip or book onto that trip, a lot of times people just don't want to do it, so you'll get on. You know, a lot of the other blokes aren't bothered. So if you're the one that's putting your name forward and doing that kind of thing, not only will your report be better, but you actually have a better lived experience because you've fucking done more stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it is weird. There does seem to be, definitely when I was in, there's like a weird ambient, I don't know, feeling of just not really wanting to do much. Like my 2 best mates in there, I think I was competing, I think that's why I didn't go, but my 2 best mates went on this, there was like an adventure training trip. And there's either you could just stay at the unit and do nothing, or you could go paragliding in Bavaria for 10 days. And my mates were like, "Yeah, we put on," and they went, and there's like, but loads of people were like, "Oh, no, I don't want to do that."
Yeah, fuck that.
And we're like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Yeah,
so you must have
insane,
seen this
right?
as well. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah, 100%.
You basically you get sent on this adventure holiday for free, but you want to sit here and wank yourself into oblivion and watch Jeremy Kyle.
Yeah, literally though, people just want to be. Some people just want to be like paid a living wage or whatever to do very, very little, and to have that predictability every day of knowing what's going on.
Well, that's so weird though. Do you become numb to the opportunities available?
I think
to
so.
you? Because if you remove them from their current kind of situation and you put them back in civilian life, and someone offered them like a 10 days like all inclusive trip to Bavaria to do paragliding, you'd bite their hand off.
Yeah, 100%. It's a little bit Parkinson's glory. So like when you have your chit in, it's almost like you have that end date, and you're like, oh fucking hell, well maybe I'll book onto more of these things, because you realise that that's actually not going to be there forever. Whereas when you haven't got it in, you're like, well, you know, I'll get on the next one, or I don't want to be missing out on the chill factor that the guys here are experiencing.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've never thought of it like that, but maybe there is a level of maybe there's just no urgency with it.
I think that is it. Yeah. Yeah.
So talk to us about the leaving process for you then, Jim, because I know we've talked about your leaving process,
But
it's
pretty
pretty uneventful, wasn't it? Really.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying yesterday that you basically wet bitch for the last year or whatever that you were in.
Yeah, I mean, the last year was, to be honest, it was actually okay, man. Again, like I was, we still had Jason Reed, this like absolute hoofing ML bloke who was the sergeant major. So I was very lucky. Like, it's not because I was great at that job at all. It's because I was very lucky that I had a very good sergeant major and a very good company OC that had known me for a couple of years and very much trusted me to do my job. So the normal hours that like company clerks worked, they basically just said, as long as you get the work, like you know what your work is, as long as we don't get notifications to say that something's fallen through the cracks or whatever because you haven't done your job, we're fine for you to basically keep on kind of going down this road of development sport whenever you want. So I used to literally leave in the afternoons while the whole company was still there, because that was when I trained with my S&C coach, and people were like, what the fuck's going on? But I used to come back and everyone would be chilling out from 4 p.m. and I used to go back in the office and work for another hour in the evening. So I was very blessed that my hierarchy in K company were very relaxed about that. They were like, it's big boy rules, do the job. If if things start to come about that you're not doing it, we'll have to change this. But for now, we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt. So I had a very okay kind of last kind of 9 months basic. But the reason for that was because of a lot of the kind of the training and the competing that I was doing. So that kind of pulled me out of it. So as long as I got the work done, I was kind of fine. And being like kind of the quote unquote wet bitch, I was quite happy to do that for the guys that I was doing it with, whereas a lot of other guys weren't as lucky. And that had nothing to do with me or my work or my merit. That was just the fact that I was very blessed to have some good people I was working with.
So I guess you're quite lucky in the sense that you're coming out of the Corps, but you're transitioning into bobsleigh. So you have a clear end goal, whereas because a lot of people are just kind of untethered, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, timeline wise, it worked out very well. So my what's called TX date, so I think that you get I think of TX leave, you either get 2 weeks or 4 weeks or something. So
It's 4, I think.
Is it 4? So you have like your what's called your CO's orderly. So you meet with the CO, like the commanding officer of the whole unit, first time I'd ever met him, and I was in there for like 5 minutes, and basically that's like, okay, kind of go. You're still technically employed by us for the next month, but this is effectively your gardening leave from the military, and then you're a civvy in 4 weeks from today, effectively. So I go from when I have that meeting, I then basically leave and go on my first bobsleigh season 5 days later. So timing wise, it just worked out perfectly that I literally just kind of dovetailed from one to the next and did that for kind of the next 2 years.
There seems to be we spoke about this with Ben as well. There seems to be a weird crossover with the military and bobsleigh as well. So was it easier in that regard for you because there were similar environments and they're kind of like hyper competitive?
I mean, I think any sport would be hyper competitive. I think the link between bobsleigh and the military is in certain like niche sports, usually Winter Olympic sports that are quite niche. Unless you're a millionaire businessman who only works 10 hours a week, you can't afford to do it because they're unfunded. So it's normally the military that are the only ones that are able to go because the military pays for them to do it. So that's why there was always. But when I joined in 2012, there was this big kind of crossover with the fact that it became a lot less military, but there was still a lot of like military guys in the coaching and some of the guys that were competing. So some of the drivers, some of the kind of the push athletes, they were bootnecks, or they were like army doctors or whatever. So there's definitely. So
there's a familiar faces at least. You're not like going 100%. Full like cold turkey into just like a 9 to 5 office job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was a very, very good transition for me because it was still very structured and there was still a heavy military influence and feel by the fact that, again, one of the coaches was military, or two of the coaches, one of the drivers was military, and the military culture had permeated so heavily through. Half the guys knew more about the fucking Corps than I did. Like, and even these civvies, like even like Ben, like who's a mate of mine and Harry's now. Oh, you've met Ben as well, haven't you?
Yeah, we've had him on the podcast.
Oh yeah, of course you have.
Go and listen to the Ben
Simons.
Yeah, go listen to the episode.
So he he says scran all the time. He says hoofing whenever he's around.
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
So
it's
there's like
he's like, and he's ginger.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You Ben Simons. So with that, it's like there's that did definitely kind of that eased the transition for me, definitely.
So you went full time into bobsleigh after that?
Yeah.
That was your full time thing?
Yeah, full-time thing for about a year and a half, 2 years.
What was the feeling around leaving the Corps? Was because you said there's a level of incompleteness now. Did you feel that immediately, or was there kind of like, oh fucking hell, thank God I'm leaving, or was there anything like
that? Yeah, I think it was thank God I'm leaving now. I don't think I really felt. I didn't feel that feeling of incompletion then. I didn't feel that feeling of incompletion for a few years. I think I was, like, in all honesty, it really put my back up. The fact that I got pinged for that Clark's course in the fucking first place. B, I dug out so hard to get out of it, and everyone just said, no, paperwork's in now. That would be too much paperwork to try and switch you out for someone else.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is absolutely ludicrous. And then even when I was like, right, I want to stay in the Corps, which is what usually they wanted, and I will stay at Clark, and all I want to do is stay in the Plymouth area because this is where my training setup is. And the guy was like, no, you've made your mind up now. And that level of petulance from like the branch advisor, I was like, this is literally a collective of children. So like I was very, very, very happy to have left when I did leave.
Okay.
But that feeling of incompletion started to kind of seep in at the fact that I felt very capable, and I felt frustrated that I never really got to experience myself in that paradigm as well as I think I could have been in that paradigm. And that started to come in probably about like 2-3 years after I left the Corps.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, so you go into bobsleigh, and then I guess that level of kind of high achieving and all the things you did in the military where you're digging out to get an exercise or whatever it is that, I guess, more celebrated in that environment?
Is there less tall poppy syndrome?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot less tall poppy syndrome, and it's very linear. So there's not really it's like any selection or any kind of like kudos you get. Your standard is being it's all objective. Same as like swimming, same as track and field, same as anything like that. Where it's basically like, well, you pushed the sled quicker. So obviously you have like team stuff in teams of 2, in like crews of 2 or crews of 4, and obviously there's kind of some unknowns around that. They have the same with rowing. Like if you're the best individual, you might not actually be the best in the crew, and there's this weird kind of X factor there, and people don't really know why, because in theory it's like if you pull, but whatever, and you kind of have the same thing in bobsleigh, but 90% of it is you do loads of individual sled pushes, and it was like, well, you pushed it quicker from there to there. That's it.
It's more
so
empirical.
You can't really argue with
it's more empirical, basically.
Exactly, it's far more empirical.
Yeah.
So that, for like the structured autistic part of my mind, I was like, okay, well, this is good because now,
it's black and white.
It's black and white, and there's a level of safety in that. To be honest, there is a level of safety in that, and there's a level of kind of feeling of security in the fact that becomes incontrovertible.
Is it that you control your own outcome a little bit more?
Yeah.
There's less nepotism, I guess, isn't there, in terms of like, if you don't get picked for a team but your scores on a piece of paper show that you should have been, then the person who made that decision is answerable to a higher body, I imagine. Whereas in the Corps, if someone gets on with the sergeant major and they get a promotion, you can basically cover it up effectively, from what I understand, to a certain extent.
Yeah. And in I mean, to be honest, the fact that I'm saying this, bobsleigh is a weird example because we've had a lot of media over the last 10 years for the fact that there's been an incredible amount of like bias in the selection. Like it's literally been in the national news. But realistically, in the macro, as you said, if somebody got this result and somebody got a better result, if they picked the person with the slightly worse result, they would be answered. Like there would be, okay, you have to justify that. You need to substantiate why that decision's been made, and that did happen, and that does happen, and that has happened, and I've no doubt it'll happen again. But at the very least, I feel safe in the fact that they are answerable if they go against empirical kind of standards. So they do have to be able to justify it to both kind of the institution as a whole, to UK sport, to whatever. And and in addition, even if they give a reason and you don't feel comfortable with it, you are able to, you have license to appeal. And it just feels a little bit more sensible. And then you leave, and then you realise how unsensible the decision making in the military is, which is again all these people that just have complete omnipotency of everything, and then you're like, oh, actually, the civvy world is far more grown up than that.
Yeah, exactly. That growing up, I think, is the thing, isn't it? It feels like there's more of you're treated like an adult more, rather than a child, with parents ahead of you, like like the sergeant major.
Yeah.
Right, okay, so we've done over an hour now.
Mm.
I know we've touched on bobsleigh, but I'd like to leave that there for now, I think, because we can do an entire episode
I think
on
we're
that,
going to do a
'cause
second ep, because
problem-
there's so much to your bow.
I was going to say, the problem with you, Jim, is you've achieved and done so much. We can gob off forever, indefinitely.
Yeah.
So I think we'll cap this at like your military experience, and then if you would be so kind as to share some more of your time at a later date to talk about kind of like bobsleigh and then what you've gone on to do after that. But what I think we should end on, finally, is like a dit or story, someone who doesn't know what a dit is, that you look back on from your time in the Marines and either laugh at or think like, what the like that is such like, if you unpack that now as like a civilian, like what the fuck was going on there, like just something really random that like sticks out in your mind. Because I know from Shep's perspective, he tells me things that if you actually like unpack the situation, I'm like, what? How was that arisen, and how is that seen as normalised behaviour?
Sounds like something from a movie.
Yeah.
Real. Okay, so I mean, one that kind of comes to mind, which is first of all, thank you for saying that I've achieved a lot and a lot of different things. I mean, for me, it makes me feel as though I think the reason for that is I just can't really make my mind up as to what I want to do, which is why I keep ping-ponging across different activities.
Well, it's just like societally that's seen as a negative, but I actually think it can be very positive. I mean, using you as an example, because it gives you that drive to find your thing, and by trying more things, you achieve more stuff.
True, and it shows a great breadth of kind of capability as well, right? A lot of people can only fucking do one thing, and they only have the bandwidth to kind of deal with one thing, so... I think it shows a good breadth of that.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. So, I mean, one thing that, speaking now to my absolute absence of capability, I'll give you an aqua-based story.
Fantastic.
So basically, one of them, again, so we've spoken about this a little bit. Obviously, I had a YouTube video drop just over a week ago showcasing in explicit graphic detail my lack of ability to swim. And that might be a bit ironic, being the fact that Marine was literally, my job title for
clues in the name.
For a couple of years. So, and I even think I said on that video that one of my PTIs once told me that I used to swim like a cannonball with limbs. Nice. About halfway through, or like week 20 or something. When do you do AT in training?
About week 22.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, late 20s maybe.
Yeah, something like that. So, week 20 something. AT adventure training. We went down to Cornwall. Is that where you went?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And one of the activities that we were doing was coast steering. Yeah. So like walking around like caves and cliffs and stuff, and then jumping in, and then basically like scaling up to a little ledge and then jumping again. And the highest that you're supposed to go is 10 meters. 10 meters is high. 10 meters is fucking high.
I was thinking about this the other day, actually. When you went to Barton Springs and I was looking at that diving board. Yeah. I was like, a 10-meter board is like pretty standard, isn't it, for divers? Is it go up to 10 metres?
It's the highest one.
Yeah, and I was like, that is fucking high.
Well, that
10
one,
metres is unreal.
That one was about a metre.
Yeah, that was
and I still over-rotated on my dive.
yeah. So, I mean, even if you stand at the top of 3 meters, like you look down at like, so if you haven't done it in a while and you're dry and you're going in, you're like, fucking, that's
it's hang time, if you feel that fucking fall through the air and you feel like a couple of seconds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like you're getting some momentum and you're like your heart's up in your throat and stuff. So basically, some of the guys were like, and this is just, I feel as though as far as bootnecks go, I am a massive pussy with some things. So I'm not a huge fan of water anyway, as I think we may have deduced. And heights are okay, but I don't like them. Like people are like, would you jump off this thing? And I was like, yeah, I would, but fuck me, it's not going to be a fun thing for me. Whereas Ben Simons loves it. Like, absolutely loves it. So 10 meters was the highest that we were supposed to go. A couple of the other guys were egging this adventure training instructor on down in Cornwall. So we end up doing a few more that are higher, and we end up going up to 17.
Jesus.
And literally,
just jumping into the sea.
Yeah. So we've got shoes. We've got like these little we've got a wetsuit on. We've got a life jacket. We've got a helmet. We've got everything in the little boots and stuff. So it doesn't like hurt your feet. But 17, I remember looking, I'm like, fucking hell, man, I feel like I'm jumping out of a plane. Like, this is just like I was like, and I could see all these little people down there looking up, knowing, like swimming, looking up at me, knowing that I'm shit at swimming. And I'm just like, they look like ants to me. They look like tiny little fish that are just, and I'm like, fucking hell. And I like finally like, right, I'm going to go. And I just go, and they're like, go on, Jim. And I'm like, right. And I'm up there and just go, right, 3, 2, 1, again. and I just stand there, and I'm there for probably about 30 seconds, and the instructor goes, "You right, Jim?" And I go, "Yeah, fine, yeah." And then a couple of other people kind of go past me, and it's so emasculating because even some of because I'm like one of the more kind of fit, confident guys in the troop. Even some of the shit houses are like, "Best of luck, mate," and they just hop straight off, and I'm like, Jesus, this is like the pecking order's changed here, man. This is fucking snakes and ladders in terms of the social paradigm of training here. And
That's hilarious.
And I'm like, can I go down? And the guy could read my mind, and even before I asked, can I just I might have to just kind of go down. He's like, he was like, it's more dangerous to climb down the rocks out there. It's always more dangerous. You can't climb. You have to go. You have to. And I was just like,
which is the last thing that you want to hear at that point, isn't it?
You're surely there's an out somewhere.
When the trained professionals tell you that you just need to jump at this point, that's not good, is
That's
it?
the safer option to jump off 17 meters.
Yes, and like legit, it's like 50 feet or something.
It's ridiculous.
It was absolutely wild. And basically, everyone goes, I'm the last one to go, other than me and the inventor, because the instructor can't jump in and then leave me up there. So he's just waiting for me to go. And the thing that makes it happen, I think that finally kind of pushes me over the edge is just pure, actually, to be honest, the embarrassment kicks in pretty early. But all of the other guys, even though they were just microscopic to me, I could just tell that they were just getting ambitantly threaders with the fact that they were just treading water, waiting for spastic Galvin to
stop being Jack, jump off the fucking thing.
Get in here. So basically, I'm like, right, let's go. Finally jump. And curl up. It's absolutely fine. Or it's absolutely fine as in my body's fine. I come up, everyone say, yes, good work, Jimmy G, finally you did it. And then 1000% Jen did it, looking around because we're in Cornwall. There are seals floating around us, which is quite cool. Some of the people are kind of waving at them, whatever. I go down, starfish position, come up. I'm just relieved. I'm not oh my God, that was an incredible buzz. I'm just relieved I'm not dead, and I'm relieved that the highest jump is over. And then I get headbutted by a seal. So I literally look up, I get up, I look round, and there's a seal that's just looking at me and literally looks a little bit annoyed, does that, and just nuts my helmet. And I'm just like, what the hell's going on?
What a surreal experience.
Yeah, it's just been filled in by a seal. Yeah, so basically, finally, it took me probably a genuine 10 minutes to finally kind of grow the balls to jump off, and then got twatted by a seal for being so jack.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's great. Well, we had someone on the exact same package to make you feel a little bit better, who was also scared of heights, and the first jump was about 6 feet, so it's fuck all. And this guy wouldn't, and he did exactly the same. Ran up to it, screamed, mega, kind of trying to G himself up 6 feet, mate. And he just wouldn't jump off, and the instructor had to take him to a lower one. He was like, mate, if you'd fallen over there, your head would have fallen further than 6 feet anyway.
Yeah, that's wild.
And he was like, he just couldn't get over the mental block.
Some of the people in the troop are bigger than this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was, your 17 meters sounds a little bit more intimidating to me than fucking 6 feet. So it's not too bad.
Yeah, it was because sometimes now I do wonder, because obviously memories are kind of fallible. Sometimes I'm like, was it 17 meters? And then I speak to some of my mates that were on the thing, and they're like, yeah, it was. That
is mental. I can't say I've ever done something that high. I think over 10 I have. That was in Lulworth. That was fucking mental.
I've done 10 a few times, and it's it is a little bit squeaky bum.
Yeah.
It sounds like my worst nightmare.
Yeah, we'll go and do a set of 15 next week.
Yeah, well, there you go. If you want to launch yourself off 17-metre rocks into the sea, people, you found the career path for you.
Yeah, and then get seen off by a sergeant mate, a threaded sergeant mate.
Yeah, or maybe he saw that and went, that bloke belongs behind us.
Keep that bloke
word of mouth.
Yeah,
Galvin,
that's it.
That Galvin's a wrong good.
That's it, mate. Awesome. That was ace. Thank you for coming on and blessing us with your presence, Jim.
It's all right. I've had 6.5 weeks to warm up for it.
Yeah, exactly. Thank God for that. Have you got anything you want to plug? Where can people find you?
Instagram at Jim H Galvin and YouTube Jim Galvin. Please subscribe. Lots of military fitness content on there already, and more to come.
It's worth checking it out just to watch Jim nearly drown.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, which Eddie actually filmed.
Which I filmed. Yes,
we're all involved with that.
It was very much a team effort.
It's almost like a prequel to this episode, really.
Yeah. It almost looks like I'm deliberately milking it.
It
almost looks acted, because you're no one can struggle in water that shallow. But I assure you I did.
Yeah, well, cool. That sort of rounds it up, doesn't it?
Yeah. See you next week.